Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which I live, work and create, the Kumbameri people of the Yungumbeh Nation, and pay my respects to their elders past and present. Hello and welcome to A Nourished Woman, the podcast. I am your host, Mikka Raer. This is a conversational series created to guide women towards a more true, whole, fulfilling and joyful way of living. Together with some truly incredible guests, we embrace what connects us to our vitality and some of the ways that we can nourish our minds, bodies and soul. A nourished woman represents a return to wholeness and reclamation of our innate wisdom, our body's intelligence, our appetite for life, and our capacity for joy, play and pleasure. It's about moving beyond mere survival and embodying a nourishing and generative mode of living that is aligned with our values, our energy, our desires, and honours the season of life we are in. Thank you for being here. Enjoy. Hello and welcome to another episode of A Nourished Woman, the podcast. This week I am joined by Bel White. Bel is a health and nutrition coach living with her family here on the Gold Coast. Bel is focused on supporting mothers because she believes that when you support mothers, you are also supporting their children as well. Her mission, her biggest focus is on mama health because they are the pinnacle of the family, and if they are thriving, everyone is thriving. The pillars of Bel's work are empowerment and education. We know there are so many confusing diets, nutrition outlines, 1,000 supplements. However, she works with mums based on their individual blood work and creates customized, simple and effective plans. That way, her clients can make these changes for good and create a healthy household for the entire family. In our conversation, we discuss what conscious conception is, Bel's natural healing journey as a mother, why she believes nutrition is the core of health, how Bel honours being a mother and holding a business, modelling healthy behaviours for our children, the significant impact of stress, and the top supplement Bel recommends for mothers. Upon release of this podcast, I am thrilled to share that Bel announced she is pregnant with her second child recently. So when we speak about conscious conception, that just feels even more special now. There is a lot of value in this conversation with Bel. I hope you enjoy. So I would love for you to talk about conscious conception and what that looks like your understanding of that, because I think that's a term that not a lot of women will have, heard before. And what that means for you guys. Yeah.
So I think what it means for us, I think it's different for everyone. I think it's just being conscious of maybe bringing another soul into the world and really, I guess, aligning yourselves with that mission and wanting that and being fully emotionally, physically, spiritually. So I think it means a lot. For me personally, I just wanted to kind of work a little bit on my health. So I'm just always looking to upgrade and optimize it. So I did a little bit of a preconception gut heal. And also now I'm doing just a little bit of a heavy metal detox, just going into that, because a lot of people don't realize, but we actually, as the mother, pass on all of our gut microbiome and gut health to our baby. So it directly comes. So I think the more we can optimize that preconception and even during pregnancy as well, but definitely a little bit during that conception period, we know that we're going to be giving the best health possible to our kids. And I'm really passionate about gut health because gut health is just, it really has so much to do with overall health. 70% of our immune system is actually resides within the gut. And, there's so many, if our gut is working optimally, we're then uptaking nutrients a lot better. We're able to other functions within the body, like our thyroid connection is to the gut. There's a brain to gut connection. So I think yeah, it's a really big part of overall health. So I just did a little bit of fine tuning in that area, and the
Yeah.
same with my hubby, just to support hormones and obviously breastfeeding. I really wanted to make sure that I wasn't going into pregnancy depleted either, because breastfeeding and having a baby and being pregnant does tax our own stores. So just a little bit around that. And then I think it's just being really conscious of, wanting to bring life into this world and really just, being really conscious of that too. So, yeah, and I think it's totally different for everyone. That's just obviously something that I've done to prepare myself.
I actually think it's something, and it's funny because, now knowing what I know and being a bit of a nutrition nerd myself and doing a lot of reading on this, if I could have my time all over again when it comes to conceiving my babies, I would have done things very differently. With my firstborn, we struggled to conceive. We, went down the IVF route. So my body was pumped with all sorts of things, and I just didn't have any conscious awareness of really taking care of myself, and ended up quite sick in that pregnancy, and he had to come early. And then with my other two pregnancies, I was very aware of all of these things. I definitely had started on my health journey. And interestingly for us, and I feel like it's important to share here because it's so relevant to what you were saying, my husband, so our issue in the beginning had mostly to do with my husband. And they actually found, like through, I don't know, some other kind of testing, but that he had lead in his system, which could have had something to do with his line of work, but you never really know. And so he saw a naturopath and went on this like big detox, like major detox. And then
Amazing.
I think it was literally like 1 to 2 months later, I fell pregnant naturally with our second. And then it happened again pretty quickly. So like, if that's not proof of how this can work, I don't know what is. That's it.
My husband and I also work on a preconception program. So we work with couples and individuals who are trying to get pregnant. And people don't realize, but 30% of infertility issues is actually the male. So we're not really looking at the lifestyle of each parent and really looking at, like, IVF definitely doesn't look at that at all. So it's so good that you seek that alternative path so that you could conceive naturally, because unless there's structural damage happening down there in the uterus, there's no reason why you can't get pregnant without IVF. You just got to know where to look.
Yeah.
And our lifestyle has it.
Yeah, totally.
That.
Yeah. And like, I mean, for my husband too, like he was an athlete. He was a professional athlete at one point. So there's someone who's kind of always, and not a drinker or anything like that. But that just goes to show that sometimes it's obviously looking at the lifestyle factors. But like you said, you're doing that, heavy metal detox. Like we have to look beyond just that, because, there is someone who from the outside has always looked and seemed very healthy, but there was other things going on. So just proof that you need to kind of keep looking.
Keep looking. And the thing is, people think, oh, they're healthy, they go to the gym and they look a certain way. But really, like, actual external health is so different. And being an athlete is stressful on the body. You're putting your body on the line and taking, your skills to the maximum level, and like athletic wise. So it is going to be a stress. And people don't realize, like, oh, well, you're fit. It's like, no, like that's stress on the body that can then break down other systems within the body.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Also partial to lollies.
Sugar in there.
I used to say that was definitely what it was.
Yeah,
it's totally different now, and once you know what you know, you can never go back, so, but yeah. So how long, like, I want to know, how long have you been in this line of work? Like, what's your journey been? Have you always been someone who's been interested in health? I really want to know sort of what's brought you to where you are now.
Yeah, so it all started actually when I met my husband. So when we very first met, I had a lot of health issues that, like, I just thought were normal, because so many people around me also had those same sort of problems. So I would go to the doctors and they would be like, oh, here's the pill. You've got IBS. There's nothing to do about it. You've got low iron. Just take this iron supplement. So I just really wasn't getting anywhere. But for me personally, I had like what you call leaky gut or intestinal permeability. I also had like a
Mm.
parasite,
Yep.
and I was severely
Mm-hmm.
undernourished. So I just wasn't eating enough food, but also not enough of the right foods. So I'm from the outside again.
Mm.
I loved the gym. I was really fit looking, quite lean, but honestly, I wasn't. My skin was a mess. My hormones weren't great. My periods were super short. So, like, they were coming, every kind of 21 days, that
Mm.
kind of thing. So I had a lot of health issues. So
Yep.
he was a personal trainer and also did a lot of like health coaching. He was kind of starting his career in like that kind of natural realm of things. So he tried to help me to an extent.
Yep.
It really didn't kind of get to like the root cause of what was going on. So then I recruited a health
Mm.
practitioner, like all around gut health, because obviously I had so many digestive issues.
Mm.
I would be constipated, then I would have diarrhea, and yeah, I was just
Mm.
chronically stressed. Like I was in a like a job that was quite sort of like, yeah, stressful corporate kind of job. I was traveling a lot, drinking like a
Mm-hmm.
million coffees through the day, and then like coming home and feeling wired and stressed,
Mm.
wine at night. So just kind of like that kind of lifestyle, which
Yep.
isn't obviously healthy, but is so common. So
Yep.
you just think, oh, well, that's normal, like, so yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
recruited a man named Dave O'Brien, who's amazing in the gut health field, and he helped me resolve a lot of those issues. And it was kind of leading up to when I wanted to get pregnant anyway. So I went on a journey for 6 months.
Mm.
All of this healing, making sure all my food was organic, getting like the best, food possible,
Mm.
gut, but then also address some of the issues that I was having. So that kind of all resolved. And I honestly think, and my husband went on the same journey as well and did healing. And we literally got pregnant like the first month that we tried. Like I reckon it was like the first go got pregnant. And I
Amazing.
honestly feel like that was because
Yeah.
of all that work that we'd done. So I think that led me into like the
Yep.
passion for health and taking it to the next level. And so
Mm.
once I had Leo, I obviously went on a real natural journey with that as well, having a home birth, being
Mm-hmm.
really conscious about
Yep.
breastfeeding and what I needed to do to nourish myself postpartum. And then I was like looking at so many of my
Mm-hmm.
friends around me, and I was like, oh my gosh, like they're just struggling, like they're so depleted. They're struggling to breastfeed because they're nutrient deficient. They've maybe had a bit of a traumatic birth because they're
Yep.
maybe in the hospital and they haven't been aware of maybe what could happen there.
Mm-hmm.
And then so they're just walking into motherhood
Yep.
like a shell of a human, if that makes sense. And
A
they're
human.
just,
Yep.
yeah, just feeling not their best. And it wasn't till that kind of hit me. And I think, honestly, I say Leo showed me like my passion because I already had it there. But then he was just like,
Mm.
work with mums. Like I just feel like he definitely directed me in that way. So
Mm.
yeah, it was a bit of a journey. And then it got to him starting solids, right? And it was like he was 6 months age, and I was like,
Yeah.
looking at the research, and it was literally like, start your child on cereal, breakfast cereal, like rice cereal. And I was like,
Mm.
really? I'm like,
Yep.
not nutrient dense. And I actually went down the route of, do you follow Boob to Food? She's like amazing for,
Yep.
her book, Milk to
She.
Meal.
Yep.
Amazing. So I
Yep.
think from there I was like, oh my God, like I want to share this message with more people. I was telling all my friends, like, you need to buy this book, stop the breakfast cereal, the rice cereal. You need to feed them whole foods.
Yep.
And obviously everything I'd learned, I was like, oh my God, this all ties in together. It really all just is like
Yep.
one thing. And the biggest thing it comes back to is
Mm-hmm.
nutrition. So that's obviously why I think it's the
Yeah.
core of health is nutrition.
Of course. Yeah. I really love that. I love too what you said. It just sparked something. Again, I hadn't intended on going in this direction, but when you said, Leo kind of showed you the way, I think before we have kids, or even part of this conscious conception chat as well, when you say like consciously choosing like that we're going to do the things we need to do to kind of get ready to have a baby, and that we want to have one.
Yeah.
And I think, and I notice this with some of my friends and other women that I've kind of, been in community with who haven't had kids yet.
Yeah.
And, there's like this kind of fear around like identity loss and, who they're going to be on the other side of it. And I just love what you shared there, because I feel like it highlights how our kids and having kids yes, you are changed, but that it isn't necessarily anything to fear, and that
No.
it can unlock for you like a whole new path that you
Yeah.
didn't know existed, something even better than you thought, or expected. So I just wanted to like bookmark that because
I love
I think that's really, really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. I think that there's this society kind of thing, and it's a little bit to do with that bounce back culture as well. It's not actually, they're not
Yes.
stepping into themselves and being like, okay, like I'm an upgraded version. I'm now going from maiden to mother. I think we've really lost that rite of passage modern society is. We've got like doctors taking control of our health with in our pregnancies. We're going to them for them to tell us our baby's okay. We're going to other people to tell us how to feed our babies. We're getting all of this information, but really what we need to do is just center ourselves within us and start to check in with our own. It's really lost. And then there's this culture of like, you have a
Yeah.
baby, just go back to your old ways. And it's like, no, you're a changed person. Like there's no going back. There's only going forward. And I think the mums that really suffer with that haven't fully stepped into motherhood. They're like kind of, stay back to where they were, which
Grip on.
if you embrace it, it's the best and the most life-changing thing. And I think it starts with pregnancy.
Absolutely.
I think it needs to start with preconception because you cannot know you're having a baby and it can be a complete surprise. But a mum can be like, okay, I'm stepping into it. But I definitely think it starts with pregnancy and it starts taking you need to start taking sort of radical responsibility, for your own kind of health and life so that when you do birth the baby, you're not sitting there waiting for someone to tell you what to do. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think this all comes back to the fact that, a few things, obviously overload of information, like we just, it's so amazing how much information we can be privy to now, but it becomes very overwhelming very quickly. And like, it's like the million different kind of pieces of advice that people will give you when really they're an expert on them, their pregnancy, their baby, like it's all from their experience, what's worked. So there's that overload of information. And I think like you touched on the societal expectations and a bit of our conditioning around feeling that we need to look outside ourselves for the information that we don't necessarily know. And if you have kind of lived that way up until that point, it's very easy to stay there. And then obviously being a new mum, it's a very vulnerable time, like super vulnerable time. And so, and you're tired, like you're so exhausted. And so sometimes you do, oh God, yeah. But I suppose, and this is the thing, and then so you're more likely also to be like, help, like teach me, tell me the ways that I can kind of, just make this better. And it's just a constant, like there's the rites of passage and then there's the constant letting go, letting it be, you know what I mean? Like creating space for yourself. And this also goes back to the food piece and the nutrition piece, ensuring that your basic needs, like when you can sleep, you're sleeping as much as you can. When you're eating those nutrient dense foods so that your foundation is that, like the benchmark is there for you to be able to make decisions for yourself. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. This is like key. But I really wanted to, talk about that because I do believe, and even on the other side of that too, like going from, kind of from the mother to, the matriarch or the crone, like I think even like, obviously we're younger and we're in our motherhood season, but I do think a lot about like, menopause and premenopause, like there is not enough information around that either. And I'm 37, I've got some friends in their 40s who are kind of starting to think about this stuff, how do we get ourselves healthy as we approach this particular season this new season of our life? So, and the rites of passage piece is very important.
Very big. And there's a lot of information now around like the first 40 days after having the baby and how important that time is for rest. And a lot of like the ancient cultures have a lot of kind of ritual around that, but our modern society just doesn't. They're like, just go straight back into it. But they say like there's a saying that's like the first 40 days for the next 40 years. And I really think that kind of just speaks to the fact how you are and you're treated in that first 40 days, how you nourish yourself, how you just slow down and let your body kind of, I guess, heal, but also you connect with your baby and let your baby kind of feel like it's, starting to come into its own, is crucial for then how we maybe set ourselves up for the future. So yeah, I think it's such a big rite of passage.
Definitely.
It's totally skipped over. And then mums are sitting there thinking like, oh, I've got postnatal depression, I've got postnatal anxiety, I'm so depleted. Kind of wondering why. And I'm just sitting back sort of seeing it and like reading between the lines. I'm like, there's so many layers to that. Yeah. And that's, I think, another thing why I'm so big in the birth space too. And like, I love, obviously just empowerment around physiological birth, because again, it does kind of start with that. Like that is the portal of you kind of literally walking into motherhood. And that is you're getting totally empowered a lot of the time with all of these interventions happening. This fear as well. I think that's the big thing. Just so much fear put on mums. So
that is the thing.
Lose that intuition and that connection with their baby.
Absolutely. At a time where it's probably the most important. Interestingly, I feel like, that's very, very key. I mean, look, I went through the hospital system. I kind of didn't have a choice with my first one in terms of that I was very sick. And so I had to have him via cesarean. Otherwise we were both not going to be okay. But I had the same not midwife, obstetrician the whole time. And, she gave me the options for a VBAC, with my second. She was always very much about me making the decisions, giving me as much information as possible and empowering me to make decisions. But I am very aware that not everybody has that experience. So I acknowledge my privilege in that, because, I know this isn't always the case even with private health, but we went down that route. And I guess I was very lucky to have had her be that way, because it's not always the case.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not their fault either. That's how they're trained as well. So they're not really trained in
this is the thing,
trained in emergency birth. So I think that's the other thing you've got to look at as well. It's not, and it's about us also walking into pregnancy not empowered. So again, we put a lot of our pressures on them for them to make us have a healthy baby, or for them to make sure the baby's okay. So again, like I said, that responsibility of the mum through pregnancy, and I think that obviously come back to that awareness and conscious.
And this is like something key too when I speak about what a nourished woman means. For me, there is that radical responsibility piece. No matter what season of life you're in, you do have to take responsibility for where you're at, maybe the part you've played in that. And like, oh my God, I could talk about this for days, but like, just understanding that you can't, whether you are a mother or not, like whether you're working full time or you have a business or, whatever, you must, it is essential that you take care of yourself in order to be able to do all the things that you want to do. It's just like, and our culture would have us believe that we are supposed to be doing everything for everybody else. And, obviously as a mother, especially, our kids are so important to us. But so I'd love to actually know what like, cause I'm making an assumption, but I think you are very passionate about this as well. Like, how does it look for you in particular to take care of yourself, being a mum and having a business? Like, what does that look like?
Yeah, I think it's a constant balance, and I don't think I'm perfect at it. However, I do think there's going to be times where you do need to prioritize your health and yourself to benefit the rest of the family. So I'm really passionate about, obviously, if the mother's thriving and she's looking after her health, well, guess what? She's then going to be feeding her kids in that same way. She's setting that same example for her kids. She's also going to have healthy boundaries as well. So I think a lot of the time, like you said, mums are just so wrapped up in doing the best for everyone and they neglect themselves. But what they don't realize in that, they actually end up neglecting their kids, because what happens is they don't show up as the best version of themselves anymore. They're short with their kids. They get angry. They're feeding them out of a packet because they don't have time. But it honestly comes back to them if they then be able to make that time for themselves. So for me personally, it just looks like having a few little non-negotiables. And obviously I'm really flexible with this. Like if my son hasn't slept and he's teething or he's sick or, something else is going on with him, that'll obviously get. But I mean, on the day-to-day when things are going well, I make sure I make time for us to get out for a walk every morning. just as simple as that.
Yeah.
Fresh air, nature. I make sure I ground myself every day. So obviously connecting my bare feet to the earth is such an underrated health upgrade we can make. It has so many benefits, not only for
Yeah.
you, kids as well. I like to train in the gym or go to Pilates. So I have those like booked in. So I know that I've got those little pieces of time to myself. And I think that kind of just
Yeah.
grounds makes me, or once I do those things, I obviously then am showing up for myself. I then feel like I can then show up for my kids, because I think when we don't make time for ourselves, we don't make time for our kids either. So yeah, it's a real tricky balance. I'm not perfect at it, but they're kind of my things that I do. And obviously through that, I, make sure I eat a really healthy only diet. And then that way I'm making those same foods for my son. So I'm not making it harder on myself. I think once you kind of know how to live that certain lifestyle, it's really easy to then start to make your kids live in that way, because obviously you're making food for them anyway. So
Of course.
I try and simplify it as much as I can in that respect. Yeah.
And that's that monkey see, monkey do thing, and also if you don't have any of those other options in the house, you're less likely to, and I'm very much the same, except that I kind of, we don't necessarily, if we're out, it's like, absolute no to like ice cream or whatever. Like I know at some point my children are going to go off and one day when they have their own money and probably eat all of the things that I like don't want them to eat. So I'm like, we kind of just every now and again there's a little, we call them sometimes foods, and, we incorporate that as well, because, I think if we get too restrictive, that can also, have implications as well. I love that.
You made a really good point. Like you've only got control over your kids to a certain point. Until then, maybe they're a bit older and they know what those foods are. But why are we introducing like toddlers and babies to these foods when they don't need those foods? So like, for example, Leo,
absolutely,
he knows like at the supermarket or whatever, like, where like, if you go to the health food store, there's like the banjo bears and stuff, like he knows what they are now. But baby, he didn't know any of those foods, so he didn't ask for them. But obviously once we start to give into those foods, when they're a young age, they're going to obviously ask for them later. So I just try and do everything in my control now while he's young, and then marks him myself. Like, you go out, do your own thing, obviously be educated in your decisions on those foods and talking about like sometimes foods, but we can't control everything. It's going to get out of our control at some point.
No, that's it. And I also do just want to acknowledge here that, and this is kind of something I learned through studying public health. It's like, we do have to understand that it's not always, there's a lot that goes into someone's decision with what they eat, and we have to acknowledge that the food industry, the fact that those kinds of foods that aren't great for our health are cheaper, are more accessible, are in abundance, if we step into a grocery store. Right in our faces, marketed like, so I've been trying to have conversations like that with my eldest as well, because I'm like, that thing is brightly colored and has bluey all over it, but like, let's have a look at what's in it, let's read it together, like now that he can read. And I'm like, see those numbers? We're avoiding those numbers. But I'm like, we're having those conversations. Because I think it's important. I'm not never in a grocery store. There are times where it's essential, right? Or there's like a last minute dash or something like that. And thankfully there are, I see an increase in more optimal choices in the supermarkets now, few and far between, but it is getting a little bit better. But at the same time, we just have to acknowledge that for some people, unfortunately, and definitely in remote areas and things like that, where fresh foods and whole foods are a lot harder to access. But that's like a whole nother conversation that I could go into when it comes to the food industry. But I just want to acknowledge that, because I know sometimes it is, and especially at the moment in, with the current economic climate, with things like the cost of things has just gotten outrageous. But interestingly, and I want to touch on this because I know you're a market goer as well, my market shop, like when I shop at the local organic market, has barely gone up.
I've
through the whole period of like inflation. So
Yeah,
Mm.
I've been shopping at the market for a long time, and honestly, it doesn't really go up. Like, my sort of budget for the market stays the same. It's more the outside things that go
Yeah,
up. So the things that, like you said, in the supermarkets, like
totally.
health food stores, all of that's growing. But yeah, your fresh food, if you can get to a market, you don't even have to get organic. Even if you get spray free or use the Dirty Dozen and Clean 15 list, that's a really good
Yep.
one as well. And just knowing
Place
what
to
to
start.
follow.
Yeah.
Exactly. So you can do it cheap. You just got to kind of know where to shop and where to go.
That's it. And actually, like you were saying before, once you've got it, like you form new habits, you form
Yeah.
new rituals around this, and it just becomes part of your lifestyle. And like, at least for me and you as well, and a lot of people I know, it's like a non-negotiable. And, you know,
Yes.
I grow a few little bits and pieces
on
of things that I know we eat a lot of. Yeah. Oh my God. I love a veggie garden. I have like big food forest dreams. One day when we've got our big piece of land, I like just dream of having this epic food forest.
Same.
Only because I find it so rewarding. Like, there is nothing, like, I grew a strawberry. There's like 3 still on the bush. And like the other day I was like, that one looks ready to pick. I'm going to pick it. And it was delicious. I was like, this is like, I got one strawberry.
Yeah.
Oh my God. So much better. So much better. And anyway, and also,
sorry, I was just going to say, so good for kids to learn like where food comes from, because there's like this big disconnect.
Exactly.
School kids, like they don't know that like milk comes from a cow, or, you know, veggies don't just come in a packet, which is so scary to think.
Yeah. Yeah. And like, I remember that series Jamie Oliver did in America, and like these kids had no idea what some of these vegetables were. So like, that's key for me, is that education piece. And we can't expect kids to learn that at school because they're just not necessarily teaching it.
Well,
and, you know, I have to say, like,
they're getting taught the
which
is like the opposite of like
pyramid
what teaching them.
I know.
Yeah.
Agreed. But like, also I remember, you know, my first like real job was a checkout chick, you know, in a supermarket. And as part of that job, we had to do like a fruit and veg test before every shift. And they would have like 20 fruit and veggies in a box, and you had to actually write them down, and then they'd like mark, because, you know, you've got to put the right things through the scanner or whatever. And I'm like so thankful that I had that experience. I mean, my mum's a big foodie. She used to be a chef, so there's that. But also, you know, like, that's key, like teaching kids about these different foods. And I know it's hard if you weren't necessarily taught that as well. I think, you know, it is about if you didn't grow up, because, you know, I think in Australia too, there's a lot of people I know that were like the meat and 3 veg kind of diet, you know, which like isn't actually all that bad, but you know, not a lot of variety.
Totally. Yes.
That's
my go-to when I can't be bothered. But not a lot of meat and 2 veg.
And the thing is, like, we spoke about the shop and the cost, like, there are ways that you can kind of hack this stuff as well and make things last. And I'm very passionate about this, like lowering your food waste, knowing how to store it properly, giving everything a wash. Like, yeah, if you can't afford organic, or it's not in your area or your means or whatever, there are ways around it. There are amazing veggie sprays and things that you can like simply do, vinegar and a bit of bicarb to get those things prepped. And spending time, because I know you're big on like food prep as well. I feel like you just kind of have to be. But, you know, spending a little bit of time to set yourself up, and it really is like an hour, maybe 2, depending on what you're cooking, to set yourself up for the week, like, is key. So we've spoken about modeling healthy behaviors to our children, which is amazing. And I've noticed, like, from having followed you for a little while now, I feel like you are someone who truly like embodies your values and really lives in alignment with like what is most important to you. So I wanted to bookmark that, because I think, yeah, that is something that we don't always see, especially on social media. We kind of see the perfect example of all of this, you know?
I think I'm very passionate about moving away from, there's this sort of like motherhood thing happening on Instagram where you're basically complaining all the time. And I see it so much, like so much. Like, I need a wine at night after my kids go to sleep.
Oh, yeah.
They drained me. They did this. It's like this a victim, and I call it the victim mentality, and I see it a lot on social media. And I'm just very aware of never ever showing that side, because obviously that's not aligned to me at all. But also, like, like you attract, the more negative you are, you attract that in life, right? So I'm very conscious of being positive and being like that positive, uplifting, inspiring motherhood. And, that could be triggering as well, like, because people are like, oh yeah, like, as if she, she eats that well all the time. Like, she probably still has macas and stuff. And I'm like, no, I actually don't. But it's, for me, I'm like, these are my core values. And, like, I'm not saying I'm perfect at it, definitely not, but I'm just constantly trying to be conscious of, like, and I did do a post the other day on my birthday, actually, just saying I'm living in alignment, and it's been something that I've been working on. So it's not something that's happened overnight. Constantly, there's, a new challenge, like a new thing will come up with Leo, and there's a new lesson from it. But I think it's just me being really aware. And like, an example is like, sometimes I get wrapped up with my business and I'm like quite busy, and I'm like thinking about that, and I'm not really being that present for Leo. And I notice it straight away in his behavior. So he'll start to act up. He might have a bit of a tantrum, or he's, throwing things in my face. He's trying to get my attention. And this is what kids will do, right? They'll just try and do whatever they need to do to get your attention. They don't care if it's bad or it's good, because they just want your undivided attention. So, for example, I'm just like, hey, hang on a minute. He's acting like this. This isn't on him. This is on me. Like, what am I doing? Impacting that. That's hard sometimes, because obviously, again, you have to take responsibility, and you have to be like shining a mirror basically in your face of like how shit you are as a parent sometimes, or a mum. But at the same time, like, it's putting him first, which then again is like supporting the whole family. And again, then I'm like, okay, I need to slow down. What am I doing? My main purpose is Leo. Like, I had him, and I want him to have the best bringing possible. So it's like just slowing down and, again, just coming back into myself so I can be present with him. And, that might mean I'm like, okay, I need to do a little bit of meditation tomorrow morning because I'm feeling a little bit like I can't be present with him, or, whatever that might be. I'm getting frustrated that he wants to be in my boob all the time. But like, why does he want to be in my boob all the time? Like, just questioning yourself and just knowing like where you can be better. And I think that's what, like, me and my husband always try to do with our parenting, and just be intuitive with it. Like, obviously, just and just that living in alignment is just all around, supporting how can I just be the best mum possible, while then supporting my own needs, and then obviously having my passion of another too. So I feel like I'm getting better at it, but it's a tricky one.
Oh yeah. And the thing is, like, it will change, like, as like you said, as a new challenge or a new age or a new whatever comes up, like even within yourself, you're gonna like, this is the one thing we know, is that we consistently evolve. And I suppose it's like, it kind of comes back to the piece around, stepping into motherhood as well, like just not gripping too tightly onto any particular outcome or any particular expectation, and just being able to go with it. And that self-awareness piece, I spoke to somebody else about this for the podcast as well, is like just key. It's just key. And the only way you're going to be able to tap into your self-awareness, and therefore your intuition, and knowing kind of what is needed in the moment, is spaciousness, and obviously we've been in this kind of hustle culture, rush culture, and it is hard to untether from that, and it doesn't always feel comfortable to say, okay, I actually need to slow down, or to follow through, because I think a lot of the time too, we know exactly what we need, but we'll tell ourselves 1,000 reasons why it's not possible until we give ourselves new evidence.
We'll tell ourselves these stories to sort of manipulate the reality of the situation, so that you don't have to face actually where you need to improve. And, there's always going to be, I needed to get the dinner done. I needed to do the washing. I needed to do this and this. But ultimately, like, that is just excuses, like you said, which, confronting.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you think kind of stands in the way of women kind of reclaiming that for themselves? Like, I feel like we've covered a lot of it, but do you think there's anything else?
I think motherhood is just really hard. So to me, working and mothering, it's so much easier for me to just work, honestly. Like, it's so much easier to open your laptop. My husband says the same thing. He's like, it literally is so much easier, like, you know, open your laptop and work and escape, you know, maybe what's happening in family life than it is to just be present as a mother. It takes so much. Like, honestly, it can be super, super tricky and draining. So I think the other thing is just not underestimating the value of it, of what you're doing as a mom. I think we're just undervaluing and thinking that we needed, like you said before, do it all. And that's just not possible. It's not possible, and it's not helping anyone. It's helping the kids. And, you know, that's probably, and like they need their parents over everything, over the money, over like everything.
Of course.
So you can put them first, which can be really scary because again, like, you know, like I said, working can be a lot easier. I think can make a difference, and just giving yourself that grace of like, you know what, like it's been, you know, it's hard right now, or, you know, I'm struggling, and you know, being open and having that support network around you. I think the other thing is we probably have lost that a little bit with parenting and motherhood especially. You know, if you can have that. And I think, again, that's why I think my Instagram, I've got such a beautiful community of mums, and I think they all just want like support and help. And I think, if you can find the right people that aren't sitting there complaining, they're like, okay, what can I do to do better? They're your people, and they're the people you want to surround yourself with.
Yeah. Look, I do love a parenthood meme because I mean, sometimes if you don't laugh, you'll cry. So, you know, so like I do appreciate that, but I really, I acknowledge you bringing that up, because that's something I've thought about a lot, is the kind of like, oh, mum needs a wine, you know, and I've even had to check myself because I'm not immune to that, you know. I mean, I do love a delicious glass of preservative-free natural wine. However, you know, for me, it's more about the enjoyment of that particular glass of wine as opposed to why I think I need it, you know. But I love that you brought that up. Yeah, exactly. And, you know, the community piece is huge. And I think we all realize this, especially during COVID, because we really then were out of touch with being in person. And I think there's been a huge push, and, you know, we've never been more connected in life with the fact that we can just pick up our phone and, you know, be speaking to somebody and have this kind of community around us through social media and whatever. But we need that. So we need that. And I think that's super relevant. Obviously, there's been a big push to kind of build community around ourselves. But I think we also do really need that in person. And I think a lot of this, you know, because like if I think about my own experience, I have been someone who has always kind of self-insulated and self-isolated, because I'm like, well, I want to reach out. I want this village. Like, where is the village? When are they coming? But the thing is, am I willing to accept their help? And also, like, I think I've looked out and gone, oh my God, like the village they're also tired mums. They don't have time to help. But the thing is, it's like you can like and I've seen this, it's like a coming together, letting the kids go absolutely feral with each other, you know, like everybody's safe, we're in a contained environment kind of thing. And just being with each other and just having those conversations and letting the kids, like, I think ours is the last generation where we were doing like the Friday afternoon cul-de-sac neighbors together, parents having a Barbie kind of vibe. And at least that was my experience. And that is something I've like really wanted for the kids, and I've only really started kind of making contact with now. But it's key. Like and our kids need it. This is the thing, like we need it, but our kids really need it as well.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I was the same. I grew up in a country town, and literally my only rule was like be home when the street lights come on, and we were just all out in the street playing, riding our bikes on the road. And you just don't see that anymore. Right? So you're right. It's like, how do we create that now for like not only ourselves but our kids? Because I think that's huge as well.
And actually, I remember you sharing a post on kind of risky behavior, like with Leo, like letting him climb, because you guys let him climb up on things and whatever. And I do love that, because like, it's funny, with my first
I was like helicopter mum to the max. Like, and, you know, I think about my experience with even just him coming into this world. Like, I give myself a lot of grace for that time because obviously I wanted him so badly and it was like a bit of an ordeal. I was like, he's here now. I'm going to protect him as much as I can. But I've eased off. And I think this naturally comes with the more kids you have. You know, you see memes about this all the time. But I actually would love you to talk about this a little bit because I think it is something we have moved away from quite a lot, like being, you know, letting kids ride in the street and things like that, within reason, depending on the street. But
totally. Not recommending it, depending on your situation.
No.
We are really big on letting him make mistakes because I think the only way they learn is through making mistakes. I think there's all different types of learners out there, but personally, like I'm a little bit more of like a kinesthetic learner. So I need to kind of do something to then be able to learn from it. And I'm just aware of that because I didn't do well in school. I was really like more of a creative. I just definitely wasn't, I'm not academic at all, like literally the worst speller, worst with grammar, cannot do maths. But I was really creative, but I don't think that got, and like I was quite athletic, but I just don't think that was really, I think school kind of made me feel dumb basically and like made me, and I school. So I'm just really aware of that. And obviously I think helicoptering just is kind of a bit of a crutch to their development because again, like I said, if they're not learning,
it is.
How are they kind of like learning? And I'm not saying like I'm perfect at it either. There's probably so many times I'm like helicoptering, but I'm really checking myself. Hang on a minute, am I fearful here or is he fearful? Because looking at him, he's so confident. He just wants to do it. And I'm like, and I just trying to evaluate the risk. I think that's the biggest thing. Evaluate the risk.
Yeah.
Is he going to be fine if something did happen? Am I standing right there? You know, and if something did happen, like he's not going to hurt himself. He's probably going to cry though, but I'm there to support him and be there for him. So that's actually being there. But yeah, I think that's a tricky one. I see it so much. But I think that's an empowering.
Yeah.
Like you said, you didn't have the most empowering experience with maybe your birth and going into motherhood and, you know, so like you said, you can recognize that and be like, okay, like that was a bit of an issue. So now I'm kind of overcompensating for it. Just the awareness of that is amazing.
Exactly.
You know?
It's key. Yeah, exactly. And I think like I want to touch on this because I think it's relevant as well. Like for boys, especially, I saw something the other day, like boys need, and I'm not saying girls don't because I think they do as well to an extent, but boys especially need to like move their bodies, hang on things, climb on things, jump off things, you know, like I think it's kind of natural for them. Yeah, exactly. But oh my God, wrestling in my house. So my husband is 40 years old and still wrestles with his dad. And it, you know, he was still wrestling with his brothers at one point. Like, oh my God. Yeah. And so my boys and even my daughter, this is the thing, when the boys start wrestling with their dad, she's in there. Like she's not holding back.
So is my niece. She's the same. Like she's riding.
Yeah. Oh my God. She loves it. And, you know, people are always saying to me like, oh, she's so lucky to have two big brothers to look after. I'm like, I'm telling you right now, that girl's going to be able to handle her own. Oh my God. Yeah. But, you know, yeah. So the wrestling, all of that stuff, like, you know, and yeah, just, I think when I think about boys, especially little boys and some little girls too, like sitting still all day, you know, and like, look, my eldest son goes to mainstream school. My other kids will as well. That's a choice we've made, but we also take responsibility for how much we want to educate them within the home. What's, you know, life skills, things are important to us. It's like, we want them to have that experience. But at the same time, we're not letting the school, you know, letting that be responsible for raising the kids. It's like we're teaching them lots of other things, how to critically think, you know. And I know that after school, like my boys need to, well, my eldest who's been at, you know, school all day needs to move his body. So like that's a non-negotiable for us in the afternoons. It's like we're at the footy fields, we're, you know, we're on the bikes, we're like doing things or, you know, other after school activities where it's like he gets that energy out. And the change I've noticed in his behavior as well since making that more of a priority has been like exponential.
That's one thing I'm really big on when I'm working with mums and working particularly with children. I'm just big on like there's this disconnect from like nature as well and getting out. There's so so much sitting down inside on a screen happening.
Yeah.
And I think it's a real big one when it comes to like not only mental health, but just physical health as well. And like you said, like those hormones that boys are having and like that need for like rough play is totally not happening because they're just getting stimulated and like totally like basically addicted to these screens. And I think that's probably a whole nother conversation.
Yes, it is. Part two. We'll have to do part two.
From nature and too much technology, I think, is a detriment to their development. 100%.
Yeah. But even our own. And like, you know, you're somebody who's probably 100%. At their computer a little bit for your line of work, and I definitely am. And so, you know, knowing that it's like I drop the kids off. If I'm coming home to work, the first 15 minutes for me, my face is out in the sun. I've got my feet on the ground. You know, like I'm not a strict meditator. I do it when I feel called to it. And I think this is one of the things that I hope to kind of empower women through this podcast and also when I'm working with them is to build that toolkit of resources, you know, that we touched on, like the things that are kind of non-negotiables for you and priorities for you. And it's like, it's not going to look the same for everyone. But for me, it's like I do those things so that I can then show up for my clients throughout the day. I know I'm going to be staring at a screen. I periodically get up, I go outside, I move my body. I might work out in the middle of the day just to kind of shift that energy. You know, I'm like the biggest fan of a bushwalk and a cold plunge, like
love it
to wake me up.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's like, there's all these things. And like you know, going back to the overwhelm, there's so many different things you can do, but it's like, just try one thing, you know, try one thing and hopefully it becomes a bit of a habit.
Yeah, one thing I think mums can just easily do is just get out for a walk first thing in the morning, like before having their coffee or, you know, doing anything like that so they can, like you said, just get the fresh air but also the sun on the eyes to balance that. Yeah. That is just like one thing. And like everyone has time for that. Like if you don't have time for that,
absolutely.
Then
then something else has to shift. And this is the thing, you know, like there's no such thing as a free lunch. And so, you know, it's like we do, if we are going to make these decisions, other things in your life will have to shift. And I guarantee that when you start implementing some of these things, you'll know the things that can shift, you know, it will become very apparent to you. You touched on boys.
Oh yeah. Sorry.
Yeah, exactly. No, you touched on boys' hormones. And I did just want to, because I think it's a key piece that we should speak about before we kind of get to the end of our chat is obviously hormonal health and just how important it is. And what I'm loving is I am seeing a lot more conversations around this for women, just acknowledging what optimal hormonal health is. So I'd love to chat to you about this because I'm certain that you kind of go through this work with your clients. Like, what does optimal hormonal health look like, and how can we, you know, for those listening at home who, you know, just want to kind of do something to help with this, like they're having a struggle with, say, like you said, a short period or a long period or really heavy period or like mood swings, like, you know, and I have to say, because I think it's important to share on the perfection piece as well, like I'm someone who definitely prioritizes my health. And in the last month there's been some stressful things going on, bit of change. You know, I lost my beautiful nanny and I definitely kind of fell out of my usual everyday rituals. And oh my God, my last period, like the lead up, the PMS I was experiencing was off the chain.
Yeah.
And I was like, just in a month of like just not quite prioritizing my protein and things like that. So let's chat about it because it's important.
Let's chat about it. And I think the first thing that you said, like probably the biggest one I see, like there's a few big ones, but a big one is stress. So obviously stress affects so many systems within the body, but especially the pituitary gland. And so then what happens is that is the gland that's responsible for releasing follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone. So these are the hormones that obviously for our menstrual cycle. And then they obviously go to the ovaries, and then our ovaries then release estrogen and progesterone. So they obviously get dysregulated with the stress. So then we're not either producing too much or we're not enough. So then we get this really bad imbalance, and then that obviously can show up as like painful periods, really bad PMS, obviously things, that kind of thing. So I I think stress is probably one of the biggest ones, and having those stress management tools in place, like we've spoken about, can help
Tools.
that. But, in that situation with your nan, obviously, like, that is like acute stress that, like, you could do all the meditation in the world, you could be doing everything right, but like you're going through like a stressful, hard time. So I think just giving it that grace, but I think it's a good example of how like that can show up in, our hormone imbalances. The other one is under eating. And I don't mean just under eating. I mean undernourishment. So what that means too is like eating a lot of the wrong foods that don't have the macro and micronutrients you need to then basically have the building blocks for the hormones. Obviously, you want to be eating enough calories as well. So that's a big one. Obviously, we need the calories and the minerals and the nutrients to then make sure all of our vital organs are working properly. But what I see a lot of the time with undernourishment and under eating is the first things to suffer is our sex hormones. So if you think about it, the sex hormones aren't really what we need to stay alive. They're kind of like a byproduct of, like, obviously fertility and, making sure we can have a healthy baby.
Yep.
But the first thing that's going to shut off is obviously your ability to be fertile, because the body needs so much energy to then like support that it's not going to prioritize that as like the main kind of area that your body needs. So a lot of the time under eating, but also like nutrient deficiencies are a big one. The gut, I'm like so big about the gut, but the gut microbiome has a huge role in different microbes. So there's different microbes that are in the gut. So the estrobolome, they're called. And the estrobolome basically, without getting too technical here, I'll kind of keep it simple, but releases an enzyme called beta-glucuronidase. And that's basically wrong. Its role is to metabolize estrogen. So if we've got an overgrowth of these certain, which so many people have, things like SIBO, dysbiotic gut situations, like we've spoken about, it is important that, we look at this as well, because then what happens is, because of overgrowth, we're getting high amounts of estrogen in the body, and we can get what we call estrogen dominance, which is what I see a lot with mums too, is it's kind of like that excess body fat they can't get rid of, a lot of fat on the back of the arms, the legs are really good, but pain periods, irritability, mood swings, mental health issues. So I even things like there is obviously a link to things like endometriosis. So the gut obviously is a big one. But then we need the gut also to be working well, so that, we've got enough things like stomach acid, so that when we do eat proteins and the right foods, we actually break down those and we can effectively absorb them. So a lot of the time people don't realize, but, and eat a high protein diet, but like their body's actually not absorbing the nutrients either. So there's kind of like balance we need to
see
do.
This is key, because, this just kind of makes me think about some people who I've had conversations with about, who might be vegetarian, or who, might not eat very much meat because they just don't digest it. I just don't digest it as well. So, oh my God, that explains so much.
They eat meat and they feel like it's sitting in their gut, like it's just not doing anything, and they feel terrible. So they will pescatarian outline. That was definitely me. I was 100% that. They don't realize that it's because things aren't functioning well within the gut, and then they're not getting the building. So it's a bit of a kind of a cascade effect of like addressing a few different things. It's all well and good to just say eat more meat, but like you might need some support and some gut healing to then be able to.
And this is the thing. And this is the thing too, where it's like worthwhile coming and seeing someone like you, because there is just some testing you kind of need to do. And there's some, like we said, you got to kind of have to keep looking, and there's only so much you can see on a blood test that a GP gets you to do. And you do have to look at your microbiome. And I'm really glad that you touched on the mental health issues as well, because I've read like Mind-Gut Connection and I think it's Food Mood. And it's like, it just makes so much sense. Like so much sense, and I've seen it within myself and experienced it as well. And so it's huge, absolutely huge. So I'm really glad that you made all those points. So
a big one I see too with mums is like that kind of brain fog and like just kind of mental, like they're just not mental clarity. I see it so much. And again, like leaky gut, we can a lot of the time have a lot of toxins going into the bloodstream, causing a lot of inflammation.
Yeah.
And if you've got leaky gut, a lot of the time we've got leaky brain as well, because it's basically the same kind of structure that is created in the gut, like the cells is really similar in the blood-brain barrier.
Yeah.
So then you get this high amount of oxidative stress that's actually going into the crossing over the blood-brain barrier. So we can see things like brain fog. Like, oh, it's just mum brain, but like there's more going on with the system.
More to it.
Super. And then again, things like depression.
I actually, yeah. And that comes back to the postnatal or just any kind of time that you experience depression as well. Yeah. And this is the thing. Like, and I always consciously think, like, when someone, you know, and obviously everyone's experience and the things they've gone through in their life, like there's a lot that goes into it. But I do often think when someone says, oh, I'm experiencing this, or even the PMDD, you know, the premenstrual depressive disorder, that's sort of speaking a lot about now, I'm kind of like, it made me think, you know, about my experience, and it's like, what is going on there? Like, what is underneath this? What are you eating? What's, you know, what's your lifestyle? Like, all those kinds of things. Even
constantly. Even the contraceptive pill is like really bad, because people think, oh, it's balancing my hormones. Well, no, it's actually suppressing your hormones, and it's actually then putting you into like a state. So you're not actually, your body's then not creating the hormones it needs. And then you come off the pill. And for example, like the pill is very progesterone based. So your body, then you come off it. It's like, oh, I've just been given progesterone from this pill for so long. Your body literally then has to like try and make it, and it can't, because it hasn't done it for so long. So then progesterone is like a calming hormone. And then what happens is, if we've got progesterone, we've got higher estrogen, then we can have like issues there. So there's so much to do with our lifestyle. And obviously we're being told these certain things serving women. So it's a big conversation.
So short of, I think it would be remiss of me not to ask this, but obviously short of coming and seeing someone like you, how can women, like, what are some really key things that they could look at introducing into their diet, or, you know, or even cutting out, that can kind of help, you know, that they could maybe experiment with for their hormonal health?
Yeah, love that. I think a big one for hormones is obviously hormone disruptors. So being really aware of things like phthalates, which are in like fragrances, they're obviously in like and like, you know, as well. They can all be really hormone disrupting. So I like to look at hormone disruptors like that. So, you know, like I said, plastic, like personal care products, going as natural and low tox with like your cleaning products as possible. That's a really good start. Then from there is just looking at like removing kind of all the inflammatory foods from the diet. So I like to sort of stay away from poor quality gluten. Your kind of refined seed oils are really toxic in the body, cause a lot of oxidative stress. So, and then like kind of just going like really simple with food, and like just saying, all right, I'm just going to move away from packaged food, and just going to whole foods can make a difference. Ensuring you've got a lot of beautiful high quality fat within the diet. So things like butter, ghee, cooking with like olive oil, that all is going to help your hormones, because we need cholesterol for hormones. So that's a really simple. And then, obviously that just in itself, those lifestyle changes can make a huge difference on someone's health. And then if they want to maybe add in a supplement, I really like for all mums to be on like a liver supplement if they can't eat it. So liver's just so beautiful. It's got all of the B vitamins. It's like kind of like what I would use as like a multivitamin. So a liver supplement, and then even sometimes like a magnesium, just to support like stress in the body, and just make sure that, you know, it just improves energy production, mood, sleep quality, your nervous system as well. So they're just a few things you could definitely do.
Yeah. I love that, because I think sometimes we can think we have to take a gazillion different, you know, supplements. And look, if you're getting as much as you possibly can in your diet anyway, but I know for a fact that magnesium is something we are quite deficient in, because we just don't have enough of it in our soils anymore. And then if you're not eating those kinds of foods that are grown in those soils, like, you know, you're definitely not getting enough. But there are, because this is the other thing, like we say that, and then maybe someone will just go out and buy a magnesium supplement from the supermarket or, you know, somewhere like that. But there are certain kinds of magnesium that are better absorbed, aren't there?
They are. And like my kind of top ones, like top forms for mums would be like magnesium glycinate. So it's probably the most available. So it's going to be really highly
Available,
absorbed in the body. Yeah, so that's a good one.
Yeah.
Or maybe the mum is having a lot of stress and is finding like maybe a lot of mental chatter issues, a lot of like just maybe not calm at night, especially magnesium 3 and 8 is really great for that. So they're like two of the magnesiums, I would say. And not just going to the pharmacy. Unfortunately, you know, your big brands there like Blackmores and stuff, like they're such low quality. So, you know, maybe reaching out to someone like myself. You know, on my Instagram, I recommend so many different supplements. Have a little look through. I've got a few different magnesium. So
yeah, you do. Yeah.
Some good things.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, but the liver is like huge. And I realize that as well. I've done both. I've like purchased liver supplements and I've made them myself, which like was definitely worthwhile money wise, but a little bit of a stinky job. But, and you know, with my kids, like I am the queen, and I want to acknowledge this because like you know, my eldest in particular, a bit fussy with some things. But like, honestly, if he had any idea what was in most of the food he ate, I'm the queen at like, you know, packing as much as I can in, you know, to all of the things.
I'm always spiking
and
drinks and putting things in smoothies. So yeah, I think it's a really good way to do it.
Yeah. Oh my God. Spiking everything. Thank you so much for all of this. I think this has just been so informative, like for me as well. And just, yeah, I love that you kind of dropped a few little truth bombs and, you know, things for us to think about, because I think that's key. And like, yes, it can be a bit triggering, but we always want to acknowledge like, why? Why is that triggering for me? What is coming up for me?
Yeah, it's a good thing because it makes you think.
Exactly.
And you're like, oh my God, and you in the moment don't want to hear it, but you might ponder on it and think about it, and never be like, oh my God, that's like a no just because it triggered. I think that's really important not to do.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So hard. So just don't put so much pressure on yourself to do it all, and just baby steps. That's the biggest thing. As long as you're just
and you touched on this earlier. You touched on this earlier too when you said about simplicity. Like I actually think, and this is a big thing for me at the moment, experimenting with this in a really quite significant way, but simplicity being like the ultimate form of nourishment, because when you simplify things for yourself and create that space for yourself however you can, and like we said, it kind of takes a little bit of sacrifice or mixing things up, it opens the door to so many of these things that we've been talking about. So
it does. It definitely does. It's key. Yeah. Don't overcomplicate it. Just keep it simple, and don't be a perfectionist. You don't have to do, this is something I'm like big on at the moment, like just trying not to putting it out there, even if it's not perfect. So, you know, even if like, you know, you don't have everything together, I don't know, in some aspect of yourself, it still feels like you can make some changes. So it might just be cutting out the seed oil.
That's it.
Or one little thing. It all adds up.
Yep. That's it. Absolutely. I have a really kind of just fun question to finish on at the end that I've been asking everybody. And that is, if you could eat one meal for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, that is so hard, Mikka. Oh my gosh.
So hard. I know.
What would it be?
I found it to be like quite telling about the person too. Like it's been really interesting, people's answers. Lots of nostalgic meals, you know, lots of things that have meaning.
Yes. Yeah. I probably want to say, from my nutrient dense point of view, slow cooked meats.
Yeah.
Because I love slow well, but they're just so good because they're pre-digested. So you're then ingesting them, and they're going to do all of the healing for you. They're obviously high in collagen, which is the building block that we need to support connective tissue, which is obviously our gut lining, but that's our skin. So like our skin health, like, you know, connective tissue within our muscles, our ligaments, so our organs. So it's literally for every building block within. So that would probably be like what I want to say. But on my just like what I love to eat is just like baked potatoes, like chips in the oven. I love chips.
Oh my God.
Weakness. So I make healthy ones at home, and I'm putting in like duck fat or ghee, and like they're just amazing. So so together, some salted and chips. Like, how good's that?
Delicious. I love that so much. Yum. Oh my gosh. Who doesn't love, I mean, you know what though? My middle child, he doesn't like potato. I don't know why, but
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I mean, you think it's like one of the things that you feel like everybody loves, but he doesn't. And anyway, that's okay.
That's okay.
He also he's like, yeah, he has really interesting taste. Like he likes, like he'll sit there and eat a laksa, you know, like.
Yeah,
So I just think he's maybe all about the flavor as
Mm.
opposed to, you know, as opposed to that. I'm like, these ones are really crunchy and delicious. And he's like, nah.
Not into it.
Oh my gosh. Well, thank you so much. And I'm going to share obviously where everyone can find you in the notes. But I just really appreciate you giving up your time and sharing all of your amazing wisdom with us. So thank
No
you.
worries. And if there's any mums out there that want to get in touch with me, Instagram's a really good place to do it. So it's just Bel White Nutrition.
Yeah.
Obviously the website, but I'm always open. Just send me a DM. I try to respond to everyone and get back to everyone's questions. So I'm all about like building that community.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, that's really
Thank you so
important.
much.
Thank you so
It's been
much.
a beautiful convo.
As always, thank you so much for listening. If something in this conversation with Bel resonated with you, then please check out her work by visiting one of the links in the show notes. Just this year, Bel released a fantastic offering called the Mama Health Club, which is a community for mamas or mamas-to-be who want to start living the healthiest life possible for their little ones and for themselves. If you have a friend or family member who you think would benefit from listening to this episode or any of the others from this season so far, please share it with them. Remember, you can always hit follow and give the podcast a review on Spotify or Apple. It would mean so much to me. Thank you and take care. Thank you for listening to this episode of A Nourished Woman. I hope something in this conversation resonated with you, and if so, please share it with a friend. You can hit follow or write a review or simply share on social media. It would be amazing. Thank you so much again for listening. Until next time, take care of yourself.